The house always sounded louder at night. Not because of noise, there rarely was any, but because silence has a way of amplifying thoughts you're trying to avoid. The ceiling fan hummed above me, slow and uneven, chopping the warm air into pieces that never quite cooled my skin. Outside, rain tapped against the window in soft, irregular rhythms, like fingers hesitating before a confession. This was my routine. Same room, same couch, same excuses. I told myself I liked stability. Predictability. That's what straight men like me were supposed to want, right? A clean narrative, clear lines, no questions that didn't have answers. And then there was Ian. My best friend, my constant. The one person who had slipped into my life so quietly that I never noticed when he became essential. He'd been crashing on my couch for 3 months now, after his fight with his family, after they stopped answering his calls, after the word gay became heavier than love in their house. I never said no. I told everyone it was temporary. Even told myself. Tonight, though, his side of the couch was empty. That should have felt normal. He worked late sometimes, went out with friends who understood him in ways I pretended not to. Still, the absence sat in my chest like unfinished business. His hoodie was draped over the armrest, sleeves hanging down as if waiting for him to return. It smelled faintly of his cologne, woodsy, warm, unsettlingly familiar. Too familiar. I stood and walked toward the kitchen, my bare feet cold against the tile. The clock blinked 11:47 p.m. Too late for casual errands. Too early for panic. I poured myself a glass of water I didn't drink, my reflection staring back at me from the dark window. You're overthinking, I told myself. But I always did when it came to him. Ian had a way of looking at the world like it was softer than it really was. Like pain was temporary and love, real love, was worth losing everything for. I admired that about him. Envied it. Maybe even hated it a little. Because I had spent my whole life building walls, and he walked through them without trying. There were moments, quiet, dangerous moments, when I caught myself watching him. The way his voice dropped when he was tired. The way his smile faded when someone mentioned marriage like it was a joke he wasn't allowed to tell. Those moments scared me more than anything else. Because I didn't know what they meant. My phone buzzed suddenly on the counter, the sound sharp enough to make me flinch. A message. Unknown number. He's with me tonight. Don't wait up. No name. No explanation. Just that. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding for reasons I refused to define. With who? Why hadn't he told me himself? And why did the thought of him choosing somewhere else, someone else, feel like something was being taken from me? The rain outside grew heavier, thunder rumbling low in the distance. I sank back onto the couch, clutching his hoodie without realizing it, one question echoing louder than the storm. When did my best friend become the one thing I couldn't afford to lose? I must have dozed off on the couch with Ian's hoodie still clenched in my fist, because when I woke up, dawn was leaking through the curtains in thin gray lines. My neck ached. My phone was face down on the coffee table, silent. No missed calls. No follow-up text. Nothing. That emptiness felt deliberate. I sat up slowly, rubbing my face, telling myself not to check the time, not to care where he'd been, not to read into a single anonymous message like it was a verdict. But my chest stayed tight, as if my body knew something my mind was still denying. The house smelled wrong without him. No coffee brewing too strong in the kitchen. No music playing softly from his phone while he brushed his teeth. No sarcastic comment about my morning grumpiness. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the distant traffic outside, life moving on without waiting for me to catch up. I showered longer than usual, letting hot water beat against my back, hoping it would rinse the unease off my skin. It didn't. My thoughts kept circling him, where he slept, who he laughed with, whether he thought of me at all. You're not entitled to his time, I reminded myself. You're just his friend. But the word just felt thinner every time I used it. He came back that afternoon. I heard the door before I saw him, the familiar click of the lock, the pause like he was bracing himself, then the soft creak as it opened. I was in the kitchen pretending to clean, wiping the same already clean counter again and again. Hey, he said. One word. Careful. Measured. I turned, and for a second, the world narrowed to him standing there with his backpack slung over one shoulder. His hair was damp, like he'd been caught in the rain again. There was a faint shadow under his eyes I hadn't seen before. "Hey," I replied, matching his tone too well. Our eyes met, then slid away. He set his bag down slowly, like any sudden movement might crack something fragile between us. I noticed things I shouldn't have, how his jaw tightened, how his fingers flexed as if he didn't know where to put them. He smelled different, not bad, just unfamiliar. That hurt more than I expected. "You didn't text," I said, the words escaping before I could stop them. He stiffened. "Just a fraction. Enough. I figured you were asleep," he said. "Too quick. Didn't want to wake you." A lie, or at least not the whole truth. I nodded, swallowing whatever response wanted to rise up. This was the dance we'd perfected, skirting around discomfort, pretending silence was kindness. "So, you okay?" I asked. He shrugged. "Yeah, just tired." He walked past me toward the couch, then stopped when he saw the hoodie folded neatly on the armrest. My chest tightened again. "You didn't have to," he started. "I know," I interrupted. "I just cleaned up." Another lie. He smiled faintly, but it didn't reach his eyes. That smile used to feel like home. Now it felt like a door closing quietly. Days passed like that. We moved around each other with exaggerated politeness, as if we were guests in our own lives. Conversations stayed shallow. Weather, work, news, anything but us. Anything but the shift humming beneath every word. At night, I lay awake listening to him move around his room, the soft thud of drawers, the creak of the bed. Sometimes I imagined knocking on his door, asking questions I wasn't ready to hear the answers to. Sometimes I imagined him knocking on mine. Neither happened. Instead, there were moments. Small, treacherous moments. Like the night the power went out during a storm, plunging the house into darkness. We sat on the floor with candles between us, shadows dancing across his face. He laughed when the thunder shook the windows, but his hand reached for mine without thinking. Neither of us pulled away. Or the afternoon I came home early and found him in the kitchen, humming softly while cooking. Domestic. Intimate. He looked up, startled, and for a split second, there was something naked in his expression, hope. Fear. Before it vanished. "You scared me," he said lightly. "Sorry," I muttered, my heart racing for no logical reason. Then there was the question everyone else kept asking. "So, are you two together?" "It happened at a friend's gathering," said half jokingly, half curious. Ian laughed it off, waving a hand. "Please. He's painfully straight." Everyone laughed. I did too, but the sound felt wrong coming out of my mouth. Later that night, as we walked home under streetlights buzzing with insects, the silence pressed down on us again. "Does it bother you?" he asked suddenly. "What? When people say stuff like that?" I hesitated. "Too long." "No," I said. "Why would it?" He nodded slowly, eyes fixed ahead. "Right. Of course." Something in his voice made my chest ache. I wanted to grab his arm, make him look at me, tell him the truth, whatever the truth was, but fear kept my hands at my sides. Fear of labels. Fear of consequences. Fear of wanting something I couldn't unwant. That night, I heard him crying. It was late, past midnight. The sound was muffled, like he was trying to keep it inside his chest, but walls are thinner than we pretend. I sat on my bed, frozen, my heart pounding with every broken breath he took next door. "Go to him," a voice urged. "Don't make him do this alone." Another voice, louder, crueler, whispered, "What if he asks for something you can't give?" I stayed where I was. The next morning, his eyes were red, but his smile was back in place. Armor polished, damage hidden. Weeks blurred together, tension winding tighter with every shared glance, every almost confession. It felt like standing on the edge of something vast and dark, knowing one step forward would change everything. And then, one evening, as we sat across from each other in the quiet house, he finally spoke the question neither of us had dared to ask. "Can I ask you something?" Ian said softly, "and you promise not to lie." My heart slammed against my ribs. "I'll try," I said. He took a breath, held it, let it go. "What happens to us?" he asked, eyes locked on mine, when pretending stops being enough. The room felt smaller suddenly, the air heavier. I opened my mouth, and realized I didn't know which answer would destroy us first. I felt it then, the precise moment something irreversible shifted. Like a fault line giving way beneath the calm street, quiet until the ground finally remembers how to move. I didn't answer him right away. I watched his hands instead. One thumb rubbing the edge of the other, a nervous habit I knew too well. His knee bounced once, then stilled, as if he was forcing himself to stay. To be present, to not run. The clock on the wall ticked. Each second sounded louder than the last. I don't know, I said finally, hating how small my voice sounded. I don't even know what pretending means anymore. His breath caught, not dramatically, just enough to tell me the words landed somewhere tender. It means, he said carefully, that we're both lying. Just in different ways. My chest tightened. I'm not lying, I snapped, then immediately regretted the sharpness. Guilt flooded in, hot and unwelcome. I mean, I don't think I am. He looked at me then. Really looked. There was no accusation in his eyes. Just exhaustion, and hope, and something dangerously close to trust. I never asked you to be anything you're not, he said. But sometimes it feels like I'm asking you to see what you are. That scared me more than anger ever could. I stood abruptly, pacing toward the window like distance might protect me. Outside, the sky was bruised purple and gray, clouds swollen with another storm waiting to break. My reflection stared back at me, older than I remembered, uncertain in a way I'd never allowed myself to be. I can't do this, I muttered. Do what? He asked. Have this conversation like it doesn't change everything. He rose too, slowly, as if sudden movement might shatter the fragile air between us. But it already has, he said softly. You feel it too. Don't pretend you don't. I wanted to deny it. God. I wanted to. I wanted to retreat into the version of myself that had clear rules and solid ground. Straight, simple, safe. But my body betrayed me. My pulse was loud in my ears. My hands trembled at my sides. And when I turned to face him, I realized how close he was, closer than I remembered him moving. Too close for indifference. I don't know where the line is, I whispered. I don't know when we crossed it. He swallowed. Maybe there was never a line. Just fear. The word struck deep. Fear had shaped my life in ways I'd never named. Fear of being seen. Fear of being wrong. Fear of wanting something that would cost me everything I'd built. A clap of thunder cracked outside, close enough to rattle the windows. The lights flickered once, twice, then steadied. The storm was here. So what are you saying? I asked, my voice barely holding together. That this, whatever this is, means something. Ian stepped closer. I could see the fine details of his face now, the faint scar near his eyebrow, the way his lashes darkened when he looked down. He smelled like rain and home and all the things I wasn't supposed to associate with him. I'm saying, he replied, that I can't keep pretending I don't feel it. And I can't keep living in a house where the truth is always one breath away. My heart hammered. Every instinct screamed danger. And yet my feet didn't move. My hands didn't push him away. Instead, I asked the question that had been clawing at me for weeks. What if I ruin you? He laughed softly, not amused, sad. You already have, he said. Just not in the way you think. That broke something open. I see you, I confessed, the words spilling out before I could stop them. All the time. And it scares me because when I do, everything else goes quiet. And I don't know what that makes me. His eyes darkened, shining with something unguarded. It makes you human. The thunder rolled again, longer this time. The room felt charged, like the air before lightning strikes. I could feel the heat between us now, unmistakable, undeniable. Every inch of space felt like a decision. A test. Don't, I said suddenly, stepping back. Don't make this harder. I'm not, he replied. I'm asking you to stop making it easier to lie. My back hit the wall. I hadn't realized I was retreating until there was nowhere left to go. He stopped just short of touching me, close enough that I could feel his breath, warm and uneven. For a moment, neither of us spoke. This was the edge. I thought of every rule I'd followed. Every expectation I'd met, every version of myself I'd curated for other people's comfort. And I thought of the nights I'd lain awake listening to him breathe through the wall, wondering why his absence felt like grief. "Tell me to stop," he said quietly. I should have. I opened my mouth, ready to say the word that would put everything back into its box. Instead, I stayed silent. That was all it took. He didn't rush, didn't assume. He lifted his hand slowly, giving me time to pull away, to end it. His fingers brushed my wrist, tentative, questioning, electric. My breath hitched. The world narrowed to that single point of contact. Fear surged, sharp, exhilarating, terrifying. "This doesn't mean anything has to change," I said, desperate now. "We can still." He shook his head gently. "It already has." And then, as if guided by something older than thought, he leaned in. Not all the way, just enough that our foreheads touched. The intimacy of it stole my breath more than any imagined crossing ever could. I could feel his heartbeat through the thin space between us, fast and unsteady, matching mine. For one suspended second, everything balanced on a knife's edge. If I moved forward, there was no undoing it. If I pulled back, I wasn't sure we'd survive the distance. Thunder roared again, closer than before. The lights flickered, and this time, they went out. Darkness swallowed us whole. In the pitch black, his voice came soft and uncertain. "Say something," he whispered. I stood there, heart racing, the weight of the moment pressing down on me, knowing that whatever I did next would rewrite the story of us forever. And I still didn't know which choice would cost me more. The power outage turned the house into a listening thing. Rain hammered the roof. Wind pressed against the walls. Somewhere, a loose shutter rattled like a warning we kept ignoring. I could hear Ian breathing, shallow and uneven, close enough that each inhale brushed my cheek. I didn't move, neither did he. When the lights finally flickered back on, weak and uncertain, we stepped apart at the exact same moment, as if caught doing something forbidden, even though nothing had technically happened. That was the strangest part. The almost felt heavier than any certainty. "Sorry," we said at the same time. I laughed softly, then stopped when I realized my hands were shaking. "This was a bad idea," I muttered, more to myself than to him. He nodded, but there was something distant in his eyes now, like he was already packing up a version of himself to take somewhere safer. "Yeah," he said. Probably. The word echoed with unfinished meanings. We didn't talk about it after that, not really. We cleaned up the candles, checked the fuse box like it had been the real problem, put the house back together piece by piece, pretending the tension hadn't threaded itself into every corner. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the storm taper off into silence. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt his forehead against mine again. The weight of his hesitation. The trust it took to stand that close and wait for my answer. I realized then that the taboo wasn't desire. It was choice. In the morning, Ian was already up. I found him in the kitchen, coffee mug untouched in his hands. He looked calmer than I felt, which somehow made everything worse. "I'm going to stay with a friend for a few days," he said, not looking at me. The words hit harder than I expected. "You don't have to." "I know," he interrupted gently. "But I think we both need space to figure out what last night meant." I wanted to argue, to insist nothing had happened, to pretend space wouldn't feel like abandonment. Instead, I nodded. "Okay." He packed quietly. No dramatics. No accusations. Just the soft zip of his bag and the careful way he avoided brushing past me in the hallway. Every step he took away from me felt deliberate, like he was giving me one last chance to stop him. I didn't. At the door, he hesitated. "You know," he said without turning around, "I don't regret it." Whatever it was. My throat tightened. Me neither. That wasn't a lie. After he left, the house felt hollow. Too big. Too honest. I moved through it like a ghost, touching things he'd left behind, a book on the table, a mug in the sink, each one a reminder that pretending had been easier when he was close enough to reach. Days passed. Then more. We texted. Briefly. Carefully. Messages stripped of emotion, as if we were negotiating a ceasefire rather than navigating something fragile and unspoken. I missed him constantly, Not just his presence, but the version of myself that existed around him. Less guarded, more real. One evening, I found myself standing outside the cafe where we used to meet, watching people through the window, wondering if he'd ever walk in by accident. Wondering what I'd do if he did. Would I smile like a friend? Or freeze like someone caught wanting? My phone buzzed. Ian. Do you ever think about that night? I stared at the screen for a long time. Finally, I typed back. Every day. The reply came almost immediately. Then we're still standing in it, aren't we? I looked up at the darkening sky, the city lights flickering on one by one, and felt that familiar tension coil in my chest again, not panic this time, but possibility. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know what I was ready to risk. But I knew one thing with unsettling clarity. The distance hadn't erased what passed between us. It had only given it room to grow. And somewhere between fear and longing, I realized the story wasn't ending. It was just pausing, right before the moment that would change everything. Just the sound of keys at the door one evening, familiar and unreal at the same time. I froze on the couch, heart slamming so hard it felt like my body recognized him before my mind caught up. He stepped inside slowly, like someone entering a place that might no longer belong to them. "Hey," he said. The word landed between us, heavier than it used to be. "Hey," I answered, standing too quickly, knocking my knee against the table. Pain flared, sharp and grounding. I welcomed it. We stood there, a few feet apart. Not close, not far, the exact distance where everything could still go wrong. He looked different, quieter, more careful, or maybe that was just the version of him I was finally seeing without denial blurring the edges. His eyes flicked around the room, taking in the unchanged furniture, the familiar walls, then returned to me. "So," he said softly, "this is weird." I let out a breath that might have been a laugh. "Yeah, that's one word for it." Silence followed, not the comfortable kind we used to share. This one was taut, stretched thin with everything we didn't dare touch. I could feel the night of the storm sitting between us like a third presence, uninvited, unavoidable. "I didn't come back to make things harder," he said. "If you want space, No," I interrupted, too fast. Too honest. "I mean, I don't know what I want. But I don't want you gone." He studied my face, searching for something. Permission, maybe. Or truth. "And what about what I want?" he asked quietly. The question made my chest tighten. Because this time, I didn't have the excuse of ignorance. I knew what he meant. I knew what it cost him to stay, to wait, to hope without guarantees. "I'm trying," I said. "That's all I can promise right now." His jaw tightened, but he nodded. "I know." We fell into a fragile routine after that. Shared meals, late-night conversations that skirted the edge of honesty but never crossed it. Our bodies learned new rules, no accidental touches, no lingering glances that lasted too long. It was restraint disguised as respect. But tension has a way of leaking through cracks. Sometimes our eyes met for just a second too long. Sometimes silence felt louder than arguments ever could. Sometimes I caught him watching me when he thought I wasn't looking, his expression unreadable and aching. One night, as we sat on opposite ends of the couch, a movie playing unwatched between us, he spoke without turning his head. "You know this can't stay like this forever." I swallowed. "I know. And when it ends," he continued, "it ends one of two ways." I didn't ask him to explain. I already knew. Either I would step forward into something I was still afraid to name. Or he would finally step away to save himself. The thought of losing him sent a quiet panic through me, but fear still held my feet in place. As the credits rolled, the room darkened, reflections dancing across the walls. He stood first, pausing as if waiting for me to say something. I didn't. He headed toward his room, then stopped at the doorway. "For what it's worth," he said without looking back, "I'd rather face the truth with you than live safely without you." The door closed softly behind him. I stayed on the couch long after, heart pounding, his words replaying over and over. Outside, distant thunder rumbled again, another storm forming somewhere unseen. I finally understood what the real cliff edge was. Not the kiss we never shared. Not the line we almost crossed. It was the choice looming in front of me now. And as I sat there in the quiet, knowing he was just a wall away, I realized the question was no longer what happens if I lose him, but whether I was brave enough to stop pretending. Before it was too late, the mornings in our house always began the same way. Sunlight crept in through the thin curtains, dust floating lazily in the air like it had nowhere urgent to be. The kettle whistled too loud. The floorboards complained under bare feet. Ordinary sounds, safe sounds, the kind that made you believe nothing was about to change. I clung to that belief more than I should have. I was standing at the kitchen sink, watching clouds drift past the window, when I realized I was listening for him. Not consciously, my body did it before my mind caught up. The soft hum he made when he brushed his teeth. The shuffle of slippers down the hallway. The sarcastic comment about my terrible choice in breakfast. Nothing came. Ian was my best friend. Had been for years. The person who knew my habits better than I did. The one I trusted with my keys, my spare bed, my worst moods. When his family turned their backs on him, when the word gay became a sentence instead of a truth, my house became his refuge. At least, that's what I told myself. You can stay as long as you want, I'd said, like it didn't matter. Like it didn't rearrange something deep inside me the moment he unpacked his bag and smiled in relief. That smile still lived in this house. On the couch, in the hallway, in the quiet spaces where his laughter used to settle. The clock on the wall ticked loudly. Too loudly. I checked my phone for the third time in 5 minutes. No messages. No missed calls. He should have been back by now. He'd said he was meeting someone, hadn't said who, and I hadn't asked. Because asking felt dangerous. Because curiosity has a way of becoming confession. I told myself I was straight. I'd told everyone that my whole life. It was a fact as solid as the walls around me. And yet, lately, facts felt flexible. Unreliable. The house creaked suddenly, just the wind, probably, but my shoulders tensed anyway. A strange unease crawled up my spine, the kind you feel right before bad news or a truth you're not ready to hear. I walked into the living room. His jacket was still slung over the chair. His mug sat untouched on the table, the coffee cold now. Proof he'd planned to come back. Or maybe proof that plans change. I sank onto the couch, staring at the empty space beside me. My thoughts slipped somewhere I didn't want them to go. Memories of late-night conversations, shared silences, the way his eyes lingered on me sometimes before he looked away. You're imagining it, I told myself. You have to be. My phone buzzed suddenly, the sound sharp in the quiet room. My heart jumped before I even picked it up. A message. Unknown number. He's with me. Don't wait. No name. No context. Just that. My fingers tightened around the phone as a cold realization settled in my chest. This wasn't jealousy. This wasn't concern. This was fear, raw and unfamiliar. Because for the first time, I had to face a question I'd spent months avoiding. If my best friend didn't come home tonight, what exactly would I be losing?